The UK government wants to bring in digital IDs for every single resident and citizen in the UK by 2029.
This government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
So, what are digital IDs? Why is the UK government pushing them so much? And why should Christians be very worried about this? Not just Christians, actually, everybody. We'll get into that plus more right now.
Welcome back to Offbeat POV with me, Nick, and my co-host, Chin, where we digest things that are happening in the world from a unique perspective point of view. And today's topic is particularly relevant not just for Christians in the world, but for the world at large, especially Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and all future generations. So Chin, what is this digital ID thing all about?
I am glad you asked.
I'm sure you are.
All right, so let's start from the beginning then, okay? So the digital ID is exactly as it sounds, right? It is an ID. It's going to be an app on your phone that's meant to serve and replace your physical forms of ID as they exist right now. So your driving license, your passport, your birth certificates, bank statements, etc., etc., etc. That's what it is. That's the proposal, right? So a digital form of ID that you can use to access all government services and other public and private sectors, right? Now, this would be used for things like benefits, housing, banking, and people have suggested even things like the NHS, and it goes even further. And I think that's where the issues with the digital ID begin. But before we get into all of that and why we as Christians should be worried, maybe we should talk about why the government is pushing this digital ID, or rather the arguments that the government are using to say that this digital ID is a good idea, right? Now, can you think of one? Can you think of any?
I mean, I've heard that it's gonna help with immigration for starters. We're gonna go into that. That's the thing. So from what I've heard, rather the little news that I've digested, you're gonna require this digital ID to be able to work, for example. Now, my only issue with that is, at the moment, the law is still that you need to be documented in order for you to work.
And therein lies the first issue,
exactly.
Right? Because go on.
So the problem is that if there's a black market of employers or businesses that are willing to take undocumented immigrants to work, well, that's just gonna continue. It's this digital ID thing is not gonna turn up in people's businesses and you know, and say who's got a digital ID. It's absolutely preposterous, I think.
And so I think right now, because obviously the conversation of race and migration is very prevalent, the government is using that to sort of tag up people's heartstrings. Oh, we'll tackle the migrants, crush the boats. But like you've said right now, to work, you definitely need an NI number, which is issued by the government. You definitely need a valid ID.
Status.
So either it's a passport or birth certificate or whatever. And if you're not a UK citizen, then you need a valid visa in order to be able to work, or a valid work visa. So there's already stringent processes in place to make sure that people don't work illegally. And so the question is, why is this thing going to be a magic bullet that's going to solve everything?
It's not.
It's not. Is it?
It's really not.
So, which begs the question then, why are they pushing it so much? Keir Starmer actually said that by 2029, if this thing does go ahead, and he was like, I want to say it in no uncertain terms, you won't be able to work if you haven't got a digital ID, right? So that's the first reason. They're claiming it's going to tackle illegal working, illegal, and thus illegal migration. Already, we can see that may not be the case. Secondly, of course, they're saying that it's going to tackle identity fraud. Now, this one, I guess, has a little bit more merit. And the point is that it will be a lot harder to clone an app, a government-backed app, because it will be linked to your biometric. So fingerprints, facial scan, retinal scan, right? So the idea is that it's going to be a lot harder to forge these things, and therefore they should tackle identity fraud, which I can understand the reasoning behind that. But the fact of the matter is, it might disturb the identity fraud industry for a couple of years
until they figure something else out to work around.
Because let's be honest, the private sector, the criminals are always ahead of the, especially the UK government. It's not the best at being tech savvy or being tech forward, right? The third one is the fact that they're saying it's going to improve and streamline processes and make things a bit more efficient. Now, again, in theory, I can understand this argument. And to give you an example, let's say you're getting a rental house or something, and you know how they require you to gather 3 to 6 months worth of statements or request a council tax bill. Their argument, you don't need to do that anymore. You just have your app. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but they're going to verify you on your app. It's done in seconds. So that one, again, has merit. But the big question is, now people can get things like bank statements and stuff on their phone through mobile banking. So you can access these things in less than 5 minutes. I guess the question remains, is it worth putting that much information at risk for saving 5 minutes? That's a question. For some people, they may think it's worth it. Others may think the risks outweigh the benefit, right? But in any case, that's what the UK government is arguing for. It's saying it's going to tackle illegal migration, really help identity fraud, and streamline processes. Now, I want to get into why we should be worried, and particularly why Christians should be worried. But first, Nick, when I asked you this, you said, I don't think Christians should be worried. I don't see much of an issue. So tell me why you don't think Christians should be worried about
now
this.
I don't know what to say anymore, because like you've purposely thrown me here so that you can be like, well, this is why you should be worried. So, but here's my starting stance at the moment. Like I said, what I'm seeing and understanding is the fact that this is just another form of identification. Only, like you've said, it's streamlined, it's all in one place, and easy access. For example, you walk around with it, you flip your phone on, you've got all your information there. Now, if you go to certain places, if you want to buy certain products, you are required to provide ID. If you get stopped by the police and they have reasonable cause, you might have to, show your right to be in the country or right to work. So all these things are already happening, to be honest with you. So if a system has been developed where it's one thing together, like the proposed digital IDs, I'm finding it difficult to be at a stance where we should be like, oh my days, this is the beginning of the 666, or it's going towards that language, or they want to control us. I'm really finding it hard to think of that. Now, even if they go as far as, for example, I've heard some people talking about monitoring and things like that. Okay. Again, in a safe country, to an extent, you still need to be able to monitor the citizens, especially the criminal organizations and things like that. They need to be a differentiation in order for the country to be able to provide sufficient safety to its citizens. So again, I feel like sometimes I'm really trying to understand this sort of like notion of total freedom that people have in their heads, that they're now thinking the government is going to take away, because I think we're never going to live in a world that's got completely total freedom. There will always be someone, somewhere, somehow monitoring your movements. And I think unless if you have something to worry about, you're doing something dodgy, well, let them get on what they're doing. The only thing that maybe I'll be like, okay, fine, fair enough, if they are going to use this to somehow then maybe start tracking religious organizations or gatherings with the hopes of getting there and then intervening or interfering or maybe shooting everybody dead on the spot or that kind of thing. But again, my brain hasn't gotten that far yet, not from a digital thing on your phone. We've already done that whole emergency service to everybody that has been tested twice now. If anything, that's worrying. I mean, no matter what I'm doing on my phone, no matter where I am, a message is gonna come, regardless, and be like, this is happening. I mean, if they can do that now, I can be thinking, well, what else can they do with my phone? Maybe they'll take everything. If anything, we've already been worried about this. Does that make sense? Because technology is already advancing at a very, very, very fast pace. And yes, it's gonna get, in terms of privacy, it's gonna get extremely concerning. It is extremely concerning. But in terms of it affecting the freedom to practice faith, the freedom for me to be a Christian and live my life and go and worship God, at the moment, I haven't made a direct link.
Okay, all right. And that's interesting. That's interesting. So let's get into some of the interesting conversations around digital ID and how it's going to affect society and stuff like that. So I want to start with, as Christians, because as Christians we are a superstitious lot, right?
Literally, extremely.
and of course,
either that or very biblical people where everything is end time.
well, yeah, okay, maybe superstitious wasn't the right choice of words. Yes, we are obviously staying vigilant. We're watching, and so I can definitely see the digital ID being expressly linked to the mark of the beast. Right now, digital ID won't be the first thing that's been linked to the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast has been a lot of things over the years. I've got a list here. So when the internet came out, people said that was the mark of the beast. We've had bank cards, contactless technology. We've had Bluetooth, wireless technology, microchips, NFC technology, and of course, most recently, smartware and 5G. I think we remember when 5G was coming out, everybody was saying, oh, this is a mark of the beast. I think that's the most recent. It was only a couple of years ago.
There's going to be holograms walking on streets.
What?
Don't worry about it. Continue.
Holograms?
Holograms.
Holograms. Okay, fine. Yo.
that was tied into the whole 5G conversation.
Yes, yeah. I do remember. So I do see digital ID being linked to that as well, saying, okay, this is it, this is a mark of the beast. Now, interestingly though, I do think the digital ID may have more tenets of interest in that people will link it to the mark of the beast, namely because, of course, like Keir Starmer has said, you won't be able to work if you haven't got this digital ID. And I can see people expressly linking that to and you won't be able to buy or sell, where the verse is talking about the mark of the beast. In fact, I actually want to read the verse that talks about the mark of the beast, because I think someone pointed out it wasn't interesting in that I think it's valid, but I think it was an interesting observation, right? And, I just like sharing interesting things. I'll let you guys make up your own mind, right? So the verse is found in Revelation 13, I believe, from verses 16, right? And it says, also, it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or on the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Right, so I think it's good that Christians stay awake and are looking at these things.
Absolutely.
However, what we always say is we have to do that in context of the right biblical understanding, right? Because the Bible the mark of the beast is a thing. It will happen. It is going to happen in this world at some point. But the Bible has told us how it ought to happen. The events that have to play out before the mark of the beast comes up, right? So that's what I'll say. However, someone did point out to say an interesting correlation to say, imagine John was in a vision, right? And God was showing him future technology that required fingerprint scan and facial recognition scan.
Ooh.
Would he not in his head interpret that as a mark on the hand and on the forehead? Because is that not the way that someone in the first century would make sense of that technology? Which I thought it was it's an interesting observation. It's an interesting observation, right? But I want to be very clear. I want to be very, very clear. I do not believe digital ID is the mark of the beast.
The beast has not come yet, unless if we know of the beast.
And
then
that's primarily why, because the mark of the beast comes with the second beast.
absolutely.
So we definitely need the first
to have
beast.
the first beast first, and then we need to have the second beast, and then we'll be worrying about the mark of the beast.
And by then it's probably too late anyway. So
you're done.
however, having said that though, I do still think there are valid reasons that we as Christians and we as citizens should be concerned about digital ID. So I want to get into some of those reasons now. For starters, we've already mentioned one of them, which is the fact that it won't tackle illegal migration, right? Because right now, employers choose to employ someone who is an illegal settler in the UK. It is very, very, very hard to fool employers. I know I work in HR. It's stringent process that we have to check to make sure someone is legal, right? So for starters, that can't be a valid reason. So the question is, okay, we know that, they must know that. So what's going on here, right? Because it's either they don't know, which our leaders are stupid, or they do know, in which case, why are they trying to deceive us? Surely those must be the only options, right? Okay. Secondly, of course, it's the security implications. Like you said, obviously there's a risk of data being leaked, hacked, stolen, etc. with digital ID. However, the difference with passwords, PINs, passcodes is if they're leaked, you can change those, right? You can scrub them, change them. Your biometric data, that's you. That's your fingerprint, that's your facial.
If it gets leaked, then that's game done.
That's it.
But then again, how does that tie into Christians basically as a major concern?
Right now, it's just as citizens, right? Because yes, we are Christians, but we are also citizens of the countries that we reside in, right? So that one is definitely a security risk for everybody, right? Now, the third point, which I guess it takes us more towards this situation that we ought to be worried about, is the fact that this does lay a groundwork for a dystopian future where the government does have unreasonable control over its citizens, right? Now, the fact of the matter is, if we introduce digital ID that is linked to your biometric and it's linked to your, so initially they're suggesting your right to work and your housing, right? Now, if we have an ID that's linked to your working life and your housing, well, then it would make sense for us to link it to banking. To make things more streamlined, right? It would then make more sense to then link it maybe to like NHS things, right? Health, right? And then it would make sense for us to link it to, maybe introduce it to things like supermarkets and events and stuff. Because, for example, let's say you have a rally or like a protest. They would be like, okay, let's put scanners somewhere so that we know everyone who's entered this protest, claiming security reasons, right?
And really, they just want to know so they can target you and find you in your bed.
No, the thing is, if this is introduced, there is no limit to the where it can be applied in our life. Now, unfortunately, that leads to a situation where if you're doing something that the government deems hateful, if you're doing something that the government deems it's either even like a terrorist act or like a hate crime or a thought crime, now it's very easy for them to reach into your life and stop you. Now, this sounds very hypothetical, but it's not, because it's already happening.
Absolutely.
England is not the first country to have digital ID. It's widespread in India and China and other countries as well. And in places like India and China, there's situations where I remember one Chinese particular example where someone went to buy a train ticket and a message popped up saying, "I'm sorry, you've been barred from traveling because of this thing that you posted or on the thing."
Wow.
After being sued for defamation by the subject of a story he'd written, he was blacklisted. But he only realised when he tried to buy a train ticket and was told he was banned from travelling.
And they can do that because they know everything about you. Because if I go take the train, they know that I've clocked into the train. If I go to work, they know I'm at work. If I go to this rally, so for example, the Unite the Kingdom rally that was happening a couple of weeks ago, forget it, that's even too far. I think it was just a couple of days ago when, those people wanted to protest Palestine action, but it was on the anniversary of the 7/11, so when Hamas attacked the Jews. the Jewish community and the sympathizers were saying, okay, you can protest, just not today, right? Just not. They were asking them, just not today. They were saying, no, we'll protest. And the government was in favor of the Jewish community. Don't protest, protest another day. Now, obviously, we're free. People have the right to protest.
Absolutely.
Now, imagine a situation where the government has control over the main aspect of our lives. They'll be like, okay, fine. But anyone who shows up at protest, £500 will be deducted from their account automatically.
Mad.
So the latest in this dystopian outrage that is now all of China, apparently, is I once again cannot buy food. A couple days ago, my uncle and my cousin helped me get a cell phone that is linked to a Chinese bank card so that I could buy anything. But now, apparently, it has been flagged for some reason, and I have to pass facial recognition identity verification, which is insane, because all I want to do is just spend my gift card balance on this debit card.
And guys, you have to understand, this is a very, very real risk. And I say it's real risk because it's already happening in places like China, in places like India. And it's one of those where you can think, oh, but not the UK. But why do we need digital IDs? There is no practical benefit that outweighs the current forms of IDs that we have.
True.
And so the question really, and obviously you can go into the fact that, it's Tony Blair, he's been trying to push this in like 1990 something, and you can clearly see that there is some sort of agenda happening here. I'm not going to go into all of that because one could argue that's conspiracy. I'm sticking to the legitimate facts that you cannot argue with. And if anybody tries to tell you, oh no, that's been a conspiracy, then I'm saying, no, maybe you're just not thinking about it hard enough at this point. So that's my case. That's my case.
Okay.
What do you think?
No, I think that's a valid case, to be honest with you. Especially with the real example that you've given of the gentleman in China that you're saying, that would be interesting to pop up the story. Because you are right. What we are seeing at the moment is, for example, things that are not even hate speech being policed and people being picked up at airports, like that comedian in Britain. People being sought after, being found, police breaking into people's houses because of comments online. That is already happening in the UK today. People standing outside of abortion clinics and being arrested, that, even silent thoughts here are not allowed. So again, like you've just said in your finishing statement there, if you think it's far-fetched or far off, then perhaps you're not thinking about this deeply enough, because you only have to look at what's happening now.
And to be fair, they could be canny about it, because literally it could be, let's say you put something on Twitter, on social media that the government deems hateful, offensive, whatever, and let's say they want to question you. Yeah, they can just freeze your bank account and say, please pop into your nearest police station.
Absolutely.
And so they no longer have to go out chasing, looking for you. Just freeze your bank account and ask you to report in. And when you report in, they will unfreeze everything. And the question we have to ask is that the type of society that we want to drive towards? Or do we even want to risk having that type of society?
But then if that's the agenda that's being pushed, if that's what the spirit wants, I'm saying that because of the Tony Blair thing that we've said, because that is true. He has been trying to push that for a long time. Do you think it's unavoidable? Do we think we're going to stop it? Do we think, we're going to halt it? Or is, as Christians, couldn't this go down the path of preordained something that has to happen? That's the dystopia that we're going to end up in. Because a real point that you've made from the thought that you've brought, no one is going to be able to buy or sell because unless they have the mark of the beast. Now, if we take that for literally what it's saying, something is going to be put in place, whether it's a physical mark that we're saying or whether it's technology that we're looking at, but something is going to be put in place that is going to allow the beast, or the leader at the time, the beast and his fellow beast, to literally control life to that extent. You see? So are we going to be able to stop it? Because I'm seeing buckle up, go to the mountains.
That's a good question, and you know me, how I always say that sometimes when we see the world falling more and more away, I say, well, is this not what we're waiting for, right? And whether we'll be able to fact of the matter is we can't stop end time events, right? We can't stop the end. The end will come at the appointed time. However, we as citizens living in the countries that we're living in, we also have the responsibility of citizens. The same way Paul, as a Roman citizen, was able to benefit off the fact that he was a Roman citizen. He said, I'm a Roman citizen, therefore I have Roman rights, right? Try me here, take me there, whatever, because he knew he was a Roman citizen and he had rights. With that citizenship also, I would argue, comes responsibility. And if it's a matter of voting, for example, or in this case, one thing I found out, which I didn't know, is that apparently this was proposed before, but because there was an outcry from the public, it got scrapped, right? By that time, they had already spent like 4 billion or something, which is an insane amount of money for a country that's broke. So yeah, it can happen again. Right now, I think there's petitions. If you guys want, I'll put the link in the description somewhere if anyone is interested. But right now there's petitions, and I think it's close to 3 million people signed this petition to say we do not want this digital ID thing. And so
you would argue that Christians need to find themselves on that petition.
I would argue if you're concerned about the things that I've said, then yeah, sign the petition. I think it may be the first petition that I'll ever sign.
Because the only reason why this is of interest to me, because I always ask myself, well, if God has taken his time to impart certain knowledge on us as believers of what's going to happen in the end, right? He's revealing to us that when the time is at hand, when the close is about to happen, these events will take place. Now, we are in a unique position to know that, whereas the world is going to be dancing, fighting against the inevitable, we are in a unique position to know that this is something that God is, said was going to happen, and it is going to happen. If anything, we're just now looking at our end time events and, sort of like rejoicing in a way that the end is nigh, right? So why are we then partaking in the dance of the world when the Spirit has revealed to us already that this is going to happen?
Why is it a dance of the world? So this one, this one I'm saying that the end time events will happen at the appointed time, right? We don't know when that time is. So for example, if this thing was suggested in 1997, someone else could have made that argument. It's going to happen. It's the end time anyway, but it didn't happen that time.
But are we not going to find ourselves on the wrong side of prophecy or fighting against God? Because again, going back to the link of no one shall buy or sell, that's something that's gonna happen. So
yes,
why are we on the side of saying no, hold it, we don't want it to happen, when we've got the knowledge that it's going to happen?
So we are living in the UK right now. The things that the UK government are doing are affecting our everyday lives right now, right? That's everyday living. So that's not end time events. That's not prophecy. That's every time living. So if we have an opportunity, it's like voting, for example. That's like saying, no, there's no point in voting because whoever is in power is going to, I would say I'm sorry, but I think that's a silly argument, because we are living in the countries we're living in. We're citizens of those, and we have responsibilities as citizens. What I agree with you is that if it is the will of God that this thing is meant to happen, it's going to happen regardless.
I guess for now we just don't meet at the same end in terms of what we need to do, knowing that. So you are of the opinion that as long as we are citizens of this earth and we're living here, anything that we don't like, let's do our part that we can. If that's signing a petition to stop it, we stop it and things like that. I'm just of the opinion of the fact that, okay, we are seeing it. We remain as observers, because the way I see it, we are no longer citizens of this world. We are temporarily here. We are renting, if anything. We are citizens of the kingdom of God. Today, when you believe, you enter his rest. We are in the kingdom of God. I see our position more as observers now, especially in the end time event.
Yeah, I mean, fine. When we talk about end time events, I think that's different to everyday living. And I think maybe that's the separation I'm making. I'm talking about our lives today everyday living. We're talking about end time events when the trumpet sounds and let's say, you know, the first bowl of God's wrath is poured out. That's a different climate, and the world will be different in a way that we'll recognize that the end has come. My argument is
at that point,
before
they're
that,
gonna become observers.
at that time we have things to do. Are there not 3 angels' messages to be preached? Arguably, depending on what you subscribe to. You know,
At that time, we have things to do.
listen, he that shall be led into captivity, into captivity shall
Oh,
go.
you're joking.
He that shall be slain by the sword. We have things to do at that time. I'm sorry, we won't be worrying
It's no longer
about
business as usual.
We're not going to be worrying about signing petitions.
Fair
We have things
enough,
to
fair
do when the end time events come.
All right.
But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, like I was saying, my position is that we are Christians first. We are children of God first. We know that this world, this current earth in its current state, is not our final home. We're waiting for the new earth that we shall inherit. But in the meantime, my argument is that we are citizens of whatever cities, towns, countries we reside in. And I would argue we have a responsibility to, in as far as it depends on us, to try to make life as bearable and good for those people that are involved. We won't stop end time events. We won't delay the coming of God. We won't delay the Armageddon or whatever. We won't. It will happen at the appointed time, but we don't know when that appointed time is. It's like Esther, you know, when things said, how do you know that you were not raised up for such a time as this, right? Wherever you are based, whatever is happening in your current city, current country, or whatever, if there is something that you can do to contribute, how do you know that God didn't put you in that place at that time for that very reason? Food for thought. But ladies and gents, you let us know. What do you think about digital ID? Am I overthinking it? Maybe bugging? Or maybe you're like Pro Nick. You're not overthinking it. It is a concern, but ultimately it's gonna happen. Just be a bystander. You let us know in the comment section below, etc., and we'll see you next time. And just remember, we are in the world, but we are not to be of it. What was my other one? I came up with a new one, a good one.
The world is dancing to it.
Oh yeah, that's the one. Just I just remember, the world is dancing to its own. The world is dancing to its own tune. We have to be offbeat.